and since the Democrats, the gold bug Democrats, were siding with the Republicans in the campaign, again, not all of the gold bugs, but many of them, it really gives the Republicans an early advantage. And so William Jennings Bryan sets out to do something that had really not been done in modern American politics. He decided he was going to launch his campaign, and he was going to travel by train across as much of the country as he could. He traveled 18,000 miles and gave more than 600 speeches. That was, the goal was to convince people that the Democratic populist agenda was the right way to go. Unlimited coinage of silver, backing the workers, do what's best for the majority of people, don't do what's best for business. These kind of general ideas. And he was energetic, he was charismatic, he had a positive attitude. And as the tour went on, millions and millions of farmers, millions and millions of debtors who were in favor of unlimited coinage of silver, and they believed it was their saving grace, their way out of debt, their way to prominence, sided with him. On the other hand, Marcus Hanna is raising millions of dollars from businessmen who were worried that what they called silver lunacy would lead to skyrocketing inflation and bankruptcies and basically a continuation and escalation of the Depression. And Hanna does, and this is why I said this is really a modern campaign, does something that had not really been done before. While Bryan is out traveling around by train, he just decides he's going to spend money on print media, on mass media, which would have been newspapers primarily at the time, to campaign in favor of McKinley. And so while Bryan's out riding around the country, talking to thousands and thousands of people, Hanna's just spending money and putting ads in every newspaper he could and reaching probably more people and not spending as much effort, not spending as much time, and not relying on charisma, energy, and attitude. McKinley actually stayed home. He ran what he called a front porch campaign, safely campaigned by greeting delegations of supporters. And Bryan, while he's out kind of whipping up fervor and getting votes, it ends up being hurt in the final couple weeks of the campaign. There were two factors that really hurt him. Number one, the majority of his popularity came from farmers who were looking to make more money. Well, a few weeks before the election, wheat prices skyrocketed. And so those farmers who had been cheering and adjuvantly supporting Bryan are no longer as reliant on his idea of unlimited coinage of silver to make them money because they're making money in the marketplace. The other thing is that as the worry amongst business people that unlimited coinage of silver would lead to skyrocketing inflation, also bankruptcy and things like that, employers started to tell their employees that if you vote for Bryan, if he becomes president, we're going to close the factory because we're not going to be able to afford to operate anymore. And now, this is very questionable ethics, in my opinion. And these are scare tactics. And there, in my opinion, no room in politics for this when someone is in a position of power over you, threatening you with the loss of your job if you vote for a specific candidate and that specific candidate wins. However, I think we all know that these kind of things still do happen in the modern day. What ends up happening, though, is McKinley wins the Northeast, the Upper Midwest, the industrial part of America. He also wins the popular vote by about 600,000 votes, about 7.1 million to 6.5 million. He also wins the Electoral College, 271 to 176. And so William McKinley becomes the next president of the United States. As President, McKinley's first term, is kind of great for him. The economy recovers rather quickly. In 1897, gold deposits were found in Alaska, and so we have the second American gold rush up in what was once called Seward's Folly up in Alaska. This increases the money supply under the gold standard. It led to inflation that the Silverites wanted in the first place. Remember, one of their biggest things was if we have all this greenbacks and all this silver, then inflation will go up and we'll have cheap, soft money. Well, with the increase in gold deposits, even with hard money, inflation went up and money became cheap. So farm prices went up, factory production increased, the stock market goes up, all the things that we look for in a recovering economy, all the indicators, as they would be called, they're there. right? Again, high prices, lots of currency, high production, stock market on the rise. These are all great things for economic recovery. Then they passed the Dingley Tariff in 1897, which increased the tariff to more than 46%. So McKinley, who had his name tied to the previous tariff, which was also rather high, signs the Dingley Tariff in 1897. We jack that price back up. And in 1900, the gold standard becomes the official backer of American currency. And so the gold standard becomes a way of life for Americans in McKinley's first term. McKinley's first term is often looked at as a bridge in American history, a turning point, if you will, in American politics. From the ineptitude, the irrelevancy of the Gilded Age into what becomes the Progressive Era in the likes of people like Teddy Roosevelt. And the significance of the election of 1896 is it does a few things. Number one, it ends the Gilded Age. The Gilded Age is over, thankfully, no more problems. So that's a great thing. The next thing is that Republicans again dominate presidential elections by winning 7 of the next 9 presidential elections. The only ones they don't win are Woodrow Wilson's 2 terms, the election of 1912 and the election of 1916. Republicans controlled both houses of Congress for 17 of the next 20 congressional terms. That is very significant because when the presidency is dominated by the party and both houses of Congress are dominated by the party, pretty much anything you want to happen can happen. So the other thing is that the Republican Party officially becomes the party of business and industry. They believe that business and industry are the way that America continues to grow, and they're also for a strong national government. The populists, as quickly as they rise, they fall. They declined after the election of 1896, partially because the first real chance they have to potentially win an election, they end up siding with the Democrats, and William Jennings Bryan loses, and so they really fail to exist as a national party. But, and I think this is the really important thing to understand, is though they don't ever really win any major elections, their policies become cornerstones, trademarks of the Progressive Era from 1900 to 1917. 2 of the big things are 2 constitutional amendments. The 16th Amendment, which is the graduated income tax. We'll talk about that later in more detail, obviously, the 16th Amendment. And then the 17th Amendment, which was the direct election of senators. And again, those are 2 of the platforms that the populists had in the Omaha Convention, the Omaha platform. The next thing is that urban society from 1896 on clearly dominates American society. We had definitely moved towards industrial America over rural America. More people lived in the cities, majority rules, those kind of ideas. It's also the beginning, like I said before, of modern politics. McKinley is the first president to take America from being an isolated to being a major player in international affairs. He builds up the Navy. We have the Spanish-American War on his watch. Lots of really important things catapulting America back onto the world stage. And like I said before, Hanna and McKinley's campaign in 1896 becomes the model for future campaigns. Winning favorable publicity in mass media is always, always, always going to be a pathway to victory, even if the coverage is indifferent. It's a pathway to victory. I think you could look at, Trump's presidency, his election, I should say, and all the free press that he got. Even though he doesn't get the best press, he does get a lot of press, and you can't take it, for granted how much effect free press has on people. It's just like, back when we were talking before, every time you turned on TV, you saw an ad for Mike Bloomberg, right? Why did Bloomberg spend so much money on ads? Because winning favorable publicity in the mass media has always, since 1896, been seen as a pathway to victory, although it didn't really work for the Democrats that tried it, people like Tom Steyer and Mike Bloomberg in 2020. So we'll see if this continues forward. But we're going to end here as we are about to catapult into a very significant part of American history, the Progressive Era in the beginning of the 20th century.